The Oxford Union Society has recently hosted a debate arguing basically the way they always do these debates is there's always a statement that's put forward or a motion that's put forward that's debated on and later voted on by the students. And the motion, this I believe the debate happened on Friday around that time, was sorry.
The 28th, I believe.
Oh, the 28th, sorry. The proposition was Israel is an apartheid state responsible for genocide. This was debated by four people on both sides, so the sides for it and side against it. We'll go through, I think, one of the statements from each person just to sort of have something true to go through. But sort of just the basic information about the people is the team in favor was Oxford Union President Ibrahim Osman Mowafi, which sort of maybe is biased when you have the actual president of the union on one of the sides. But there's also Palestinian activist Mohammed El-Kurd, writer Susan Abul Hava, and anti-Zionist Israeli-American Miko Peled. In opposition, it were British barrister Natasha Hausdorff from UK Lawyers for Israel, broadcaster Jonathan Sakerdoti, Arab-Israeli journalist Yosef Haddad, and Mossab Hassan Youssef, the son of Hamas founder, later turned IDF spy. So, joining me today is James. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome to the Daily Objective. So, me and James have discussed this a bit beforehand, and sort of, I kind of like the idea of the Oxford Union debates. I like, as I've always said, I think that if there is a place to have the most controversial debates, to have the most sort of like yeah, basically like most controversial stuff, universities is the place it should be. Uh, but when it comes to this, James, how do you think this debate went?
I would, from the description of it and from the statements that I've read that were made by the debaters and the description of the event, the protests before and after and so forth, uh, it obviously wasn't a debate. I mean, really not much of a debate. It was a debate about having a debate. It was a debate about whether or not it was a debatable issue. They come out saying, on the pro-Palestinian side, they come out saying, I refuse to debate the issue so long as Palestinians are being killed. Whoa, wait, what? Huh? In other words, it's the meta debate. And this is, I have to say, there's a limited value to debate as such. I mean, it can be a value, it seems to me, if there is a proposition that can get us at some discovery, knowing what the essential differences between the two sides of an issue are, or bringing to light new facts that might help clarify the situation. None of that happened. So in that sense, it wasn't a debate. This isn't a proposition that I would have debated. I do not find the question worthy of debate. It's like saying, is the earth flat or something? We've reached a point where it is a sanction of the flat earthers to engage in any sort of debate. Proposition, the earth is flat. Okay, now, in logic, there is a problem here in general because this is the way the debaters themselves took it. In logic, there's the question, the fallacy of begging the question. And in effect, by saying Israel proposed, Israel is an apartheid state engaged in genocide, as you point out, that form can sometimes be valid. The content here made it impossible to have a valid debate. I mean, I can affirmatively demonstrate that Israel is not engaged in genocide. Anyone can. Anyone can. Everyone knows Israel has the capacity to wipe out the entire populations of the West Bank and Gaza. They have for many decades had that power. And for many decades, the populations there have been increasing, There is simply no way Israel could be engaged in a genocide, full stop, just based on facts everyone knows. It's like the flat earth. It's not a debatable proposition. And it's pretty obvious since genocide came onto the human conceptual radar with the very real attempt to wipe out the Jews of Europe by Adolf Hitler. And there are comparable moments, such as the attempt to wipe out the Armenians by the Turks. There have been genocides. So as we discussed earlier, yeah, I suppose theoretically you could debate whether or not this wipeout of a attempted wipeout, this murderous act is, does that murder constitute a genocide? Well, first I have to know whether there's murder going on. And for there to know there's murder going on, I have to know who's the aggressor and who is acting in self-defense. I don't even know if it's murder or killing in self-defense. One of the assumptions going in here, for example, I refuse to debate this issue so long as Palestinians are dying. And now, they said a lot of BS things. I mean, there's a lot of factual inaccuracies in what they say, but you've got people storming out. You've got people demonstrating. This wasn't a debate. This was an opportunity to, engage in emotional effusion. And rank racism on the side of the pro-Palestinian side. I mean, I would not engage in a debate with people who are attacking my race, attacking me ethnically, and then saying I'm the racist as they do so, because that's exactly it. I mean, I suppose I'm a oppressive white colonializer. So any opinion, even though I come from a Christian background, I live thousands of miles away, any opinion I might articulate would have been denounced as that of a white oppressive colonializer, completely oblivious to their own racism. No, it wasn't a debate. It wasn't a proposition worthy of debate, nor was any light cast on the issue. And more than that, debate should help us zero in on what the real difference is between the two. Nothing like that was going to happen in this format with this question and with these people.
Yeah, there is uh, a statement or sort of like an idea that I'm not sure even where I heard from, but basically, if you take debate seriously, basically every debate will eventually lead into like a meta-ethical debate or sort of metaphysical debate, because you need when it comes to sort of debate, and I've talked about it on an earlier episode, when you have a debate, there has to be something we agree on. There has to be something, some base we start with, and then we go from there. Because again, as you said, with something like, as you said, that you could debate about is an action that maybe happened in the past or that is happening right now, is what's that ongoing a genocide? There should be a clear understanding. We should be able to, okay, what is a genocide, what a genocide requires, and does the thing that is currently going on, is that, does it fulfill the sort of requirements? And I've looked up the Genocide Convention to sort of like go through it and sort of like try to apply it. And that should be basically it. It should be pretty easy, but when it comes to these things, it's as you said, it was the word I like to use. It was just a bunch of virtue signaling, like, oh, I'm not gonna even debate. Like Palestinians are dying. I mean, there's always people die, or I don't want to put it as morbid like that, but there's always bad things happening when you discuss or when when you make a new law, when you're putting like a new law in order, or when you have sort of during every single trial there is like an outcome that's gonna determine maybe someone's life. I mean, that's when it comes to these things, when it comes to these important things, they are. I mean, that's why they are important. And again, if you really care for supposed genocide against Palestinians, uh, again, you don't even care enough to like put an evidence to it, put some uh and it's I'm trying to remember. It's sort of like this: you either believe it, or I think there's like a idiom for it. It's like something, you either understand it or you it cannot be explained to you. Like basically you either get it or you don't. Basically, you either get it that there's genocide going on against Palestinians, or you don't, and that's basically when it ends. It's sort of like a shut down your mind and just either believe me or no. That's pretty
Well,
much what this sort of debate was.
that's it. I mean, if you look, the Allies clearly were trying to starve the German people during the war. They were refusing to allow, they weren't feeding the German people. And a refusal of the Allies to feed the German people during World War II does not amount to genocide. So taken out of context, this blockade of food coming in, that needs to be understood in its context. Or
Yeah,
just
but
take an
just to
example.
bring in why that specific like starvation matter as one of the sort of requirements of genocide, or one of the possible ways to, I guess, commit genocide, or sort of, is basically putting people or a group in a conditions not like sort of like suitable for living, or basically putting them in a position where it's not possible to live. So
In
you
any
know,
decent war, the
yeah,
defender has every right to put them in a position, that precise position,
yeah,
where
just
they're
quickly,
deprived
just
of
to
it.
sort of
Yeah,
like give an example. So, like Germans putting Jews in a concentration camp. There's no
that
way to live inside of it. There's no way to, even if let's say they only like put them there and left them there, didn't actively kill them, just like lock them in like a cage with no food and no way for like years to come, that would still be understood as a genocide.
Yeah, well, look at it this way. It's clear that Hitler was gathering people from all parts of Europe that he had control over simply because they were Jewish. There are many places in Europe where he would just take people because they were Jewish and put them into
Yeah,
concentration
and not
camps.
just under his control, but with every nation that was allied to him, asking for their Jews to get out
Precisely
of there.
right. He was gathering up the entire as much as of the Jewish population of Europe as he possibly could from anywhere he had influence or control to kill them. And in concentration camps, the way he slaughtered them in the millions. Now, that qualifies as a genocide. We have plenty of statements of intent. Now, the statements of intent that they're using come from uh, Israeli leaders, or before that, Zionist pioneers of Zionism, who in effect were engaged in a violent conflict with people. To give the analogy here, General Patton during World War II is boasting about the number of German casualties he's taking out in France. Okay, during World War II. Well, does that mean it's genocide? Because he's saying, "Yay, we killed Germans, and look how many Germans we killed." Well, you can find a lot of Israeli military people who said the equivalent things. That does not prove genocide. General Patton was not a racist against Germans. He was not really trying. The ultimate goal of the Allies was not to wipe out the German people. No, they were engaged in an act of self-defense as they were killing Germans. Killing is not intrinsically evil. It depends on whether you're the aggressor or acting in self-defense. And that is the critical issue, and that was completely obliterated. When you're acting in valid self-defense, cheering the number of enemies you're killing makes perfect sense and is the moral position. And so quoting Israelis and Zionists out of context like that doesn't get to the point. It doesn't define what genocide is. It doesn't tell us whether there's actually an attempt to wipe out the Palestinian people, which the Israelis could have long ago done. And the broad sweep, I mean, any idea that, say, an Asian colonial oppressor, Genghis Khan, or a Muslim colonial oppressor, look at all that Muslim conquest over the last 1,000 years, from Morocco to Indonesia, and all the terrorism we're experiencing today. That's not imperialist oppression at all. That can't be, you see. Only the white imperialist aggression, which included in some of these pro-Palestinian debaters' minds, Winston Churchill, Christopher Columbus, and so forth, as if Christopher Columbus came to wipe out the Native American population. Now that is insane. Now, if your mental state is Christopher Columbus was, rubbing his hands with glee with the idea that he would wipe out the Native American population when he accidentally stumbled upon America, and diseases actually, truly accidentally killed 90+% of the Native American population. That's not a genocide. That's a pandemic that would have happened whichever way the discovery had gone. So if you're going to drop context to the point that you think that Columbus and Churchill had genocidal intent, which these pro-Palestinians are actually articulating during the debate, then you're so far off of reality. There's no debating. There's no agreement, as you say, in principle as to anything, as to what murder is, what genocide is, what facts would constitute that, what intention would constitute that. And intention is everything. Now, these international conventions, in my view, if they can be applied to Israel at all, on the face of it, are non-objective. non-objective rules, if there were such a thing as valid international law, which I put in air quotes. Um, then I would question the objectivity of the law if it could be applied against Churchill, Columbus, or the existence of Israel. No, Hamas is the one that has stated genocidal intentions. Hezbollah, Iran have stated genocidal intentions, and they engage in aggressive violence. And they have engaged in aggressive violence against Israel since the moment it existed. No, they're the ones who sort of lack the power. And see, lacking the power to fully wipe out the Jews as they would like to does not excuse you from your truly genocidal intent. Israel, on the other hand, has long had the power to wipe out the Palestinians, and the Palestinian population has grown. So, on the face of it, it's an invalid question to debate.
Yeah, and you have to realize something you said. They would say the thing about Churchill, basically that he was also a genocider or he was also a war criminal, and about Columbus and about all these other people. And most likely they would. That's why they use the term. And so what you have to realize when it comes to sort of the way they use the word, it's sort of like me, calling James a sexist. And he's like, yeah, I think he's a sexist, he's a chauvinist. And he's like, well, why do you think that? Well, I think he believes there are differences between man and woman. And it's like,
Right.
well, that's not what you implied by saying he's a sexist. By saying he's a sexist, you're implying he, things that men are sort of like have like inherent like better value or something like
Well,
that.
yeah,
And that's how they use.
morally superior. Yeah.
And, and that's how they use genocide. They say, well, Israel is doing a genocide. It's committing. We might not even have time to talk about apartheid because that was also part of it. But it's doing an open air prison, and it's like, well, why do you think it's committing a genocide? Well, it's stopping the food from going into the war zone, stopping the food from going to their enemies. That's not what people think when you say genocide. When you say genocide, and that's why I think the way one of the no points I have in my notes is like, whoa, words, what do they even mean? It's like the way sort of what you say, the way you use words are important, the way the definitions are important, and what you imply by using certain words is important. When you say someone is committing a genocide, people automatically will think of Nazi Germany and concentration camps. That's what you have to realize. Like even and that's why sort of if you go by the definition of the Genocide Convention. One part of the Genocide Convention is also basically taking away children from a group and putting them in a different group is part of a genocide. Also, castrating a population could be classified under genocide, and I think sort of validly so. Because that's one of the ways it was used in the past. Uh, but as you said, also big part of the genocide is also intention. You cannot accidentally commit genocide. It's not something, even it's called mens rea when it comes to specifically the Genocide Convention. Like sort of like a willingness, like there has to be basically like it has to be clear the intention. It's not something. So as you said with the basically the discovery of the new world, and when the basically what happened is the diseases we already sort of survived through, sort of like the big diseases that jumped from different species, we've survived, like smallpox, I think was one of the big ones. We sort of have acclimated to the new world. People had no basically protection against it, and that was the big reason. So that just cannot be classified as genocide, because it was not like we had the understanding in 1400s about like microbiology and basically how like diseases like that work.
It is completely insane to think that Christopher Columbus discovered America with a genocidal intention. I mean, it is insane. It is fact free. You're obviously taking a racist, and get the racism behind this whole thing. If I were to say Islamic culture, Islamic religion, the ideology that dominates in the Islamic world today is savage, and I'm giving you normative moral criticism of that, they would call that racism. So a criticism of an ideology is racism, don't you know? Now, on the other hand, they are perfectly happy to engage in all kinds of racism the other way. Like I say, white colonial oppression is the thing. That is utterly bizarre, absolutely utterly bizarre. And that, and this is of course the thing. If the son of Hamas comes up there and says, criticizes what the concept of Palestinian actually means, starts opening the box even of what the concept Palestinian means, well, that's racism. So storm out of the debate. There's nothing more to hear. Wait a minute here. It isn't. You're telling me that a Palestinian, in quotes, the son of Hamas, is engaged in a racist argument against Palestinians. I have to stop and think, wait, what is that? How can that be? He's talking about the development of the concept, the recent development of the ethnicity called Palestinian. That's worthy of debate. That's worthy of debate. But there were people there, oh no, once you bring that up, I'm out of here. I won't debate that issue. However, let's continue to discuss whether Israel should exist at all, which is really what the other side was arguing. They are saying Israel shouldn't exist. Now, Europeans are notorious for their anti-Semitism over more than 1,000 years now, all the way up to and beyond the Holocaust and today. The Islamic world is notorious for its racism against Jews. In recent centuries, horrific. That is not even on the table. You have taken the entire context of anti-Semitism off the table in this debate, the way the other side debated it. Now, that's racism. They're absolutely defending the racism of Hamas, the racism of Hezbollah, the genocidal intentions of Hamas, the genocidal intentions of Hezbollah. They're ignoring the racism in European and Islamic culture against Jews. And in fact, the entire premise was based on that anti-Semitic idea. So it was a bunch of racists using the concepts of racism against Israel in their racist tirade, in their fully discriminatory collectivist tirade, fact-free tirade. And that's what it was. It was emotional effusion. It was storming out, declaring the other side morally invalid. That's not going to throw light on the situation. It's only going to tell me that the Oxford Union has reached a new low in intellectual discourse. This was the opposite of intellectual discourse. It is the shameful moment for the most famous debating forum in the world, the Oxford Union. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. They are destroying debate itself in hosting this sort of screaming match.
We have a few super chats, so let me read them out. We have a new member, Brian. Welcome to the YouTube membership. We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says, in honor of James' tireless advocacy for Leonard Peikoff and Ayn Rand's ideas. Thank you so much. We have a super chat from Vadim. Thank you. We have a super chat from Mark. Thank you. We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you. And a super chat from PC. He says, Oxford is no longer a great school or of learning, nor is Harvard. And so sort of going into we didn't even have time to actually go through most of their statements, but we've covered I think the essential of it, almost of all of them. But basically, so the notion passed, or basically was approved by the students in.
Big surprise there, huh? And I have to agree with PC. Places like Oxford and Harvard, the vaunted institutions of learning in the West, by them, that in itself is a context that I would be suspicious of, precisely because of the leanings of there's nothing fair about what's taught at those universities. There's nothing balanced, there's nothing factual, there's nothing objective. These places promote philosophical corruption and anti-intellectual propaganda, racist propaganda. So yeah, the very context of Oxford and Harvard is itself dubious for a legitimate debate on this issue. I agree with PC.
And so it passed with 278 votes to 59. So they declared Israel an apartheid state responsible for genocide, despite the fact that the debate didn't really happen in any way, which sort of goes to what I've been saying, when we did, I think, episode on Thursday, the Piers Morgan method, is that basically this war, the Israeli conflict, it's about ethics, it's about morality. It has never been about the facts. There's no it's similar to like basically arguing for capitalism. It's
Right.
the material case or the pragmatic case has been made decades ago with the fall of the Soviet Union, or maybe even with the Industrial Revolution itself, with the you could make with the difference between South and North Korea. I mean, you could go on and on when the pragmatic case for capitalism has been made. But the
Practical
moral
case today.
yeah, but the moral case has been made by Ayn Rand, and we continue to advocate for her ideas. But that's what the fight real is, because I think that's why an issue like this has been eye-opening for many people, because many people really see there is no way I could see that Israel is committing genocide. It makes no sense. Yet people are arguing for it. And in a similar way, there is no way you could say capitalism is the impractical system, or it's not the better system. But
They're
is it
not
the
getting to
more
principles. They're not getting to deeper ideas. They're not focused on ideas, what ideas we share. And as you say, a debate presupposes that we at least share a value or an idea. And the question is, does this qualify as coming within or not within that value or idea? And they didn't share such a thing. For example, just one last thing, apartheid. Jews are ghettoized in many Muslim countries. That's true apartheid. Now, or on the West Bank, Jewish settlers are violently thrown out, and it's always an offense for there to be Jews in the area. Well, isn't that an anti-Jewish apartheid? Now, on the other hand, Israel has Christian and Muslims in their population who do not get killed or put into, they're not ghettoized. So right there, you've dropped the entire factual context for what might constitute apartheid, ignoring everything around you and focusing on the fact that somehow, if Israel itself isn't destroyed, there's an apartheid situation. Don't see, if you get to that point, what you're saying is until and unless there is no more Israel, there's apartheid oppressing Arab Muslims in the area. Obvious nonsense on the face of it. Now, how do you get away with that kind of obvious nonsense on the face of it? By rigging the debate and not defining the moral issues involved, as you say. Then there was no clarification of the debate and the essential difference here, was there? None at all. This was not a debate. This was, and if it calls itself a debate, that shows the degree of intellectual bankruptcy that the West has reached.
So we'll continue on the reality show talking about Hassan Piker. Oh, we have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says they just want to know Israel. That's it.
That's
Um,
it.
yeah, and I think it's clear the way they've spoke. It was never about how many people died. People were saying too many Palestinians died few days after October 7, when Israel hasn't even taken much action. They were calling for ceasefire very early on. Some people even the day off. Uh, uh, what I was going. Oh, we're gonna talk about Hassan Piker, the famous Twitch streamer, and some of his older controversies, some of his more recent controversies. So make sure to join us on Allah's favorite infidel, the Hassan Piker story, in just a minute or so. Thank you, James, for joining me today. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and bye bye.
Be safe.